What's up, everybody? I'm out of paper, so I'm using the Jets helmet I keep on my desk for this week's Jets podcast and card. I'm Joe Caparoso, owner, editor, and chief of Turn the Jets, joined by my fellow staff writers, Dalvin Osorio, fresh back from Mexico.
That's right.
Cole Patterson, worker of 11 jobs in the sports industry. Cole,
how you doing?
Tonight, we are going to rip through your Twitter questions, and we're going to talk a little Jets-Bills, and then we're going to just kind of talk a little big picture on the final 6 games for our 2-8 Jets, who haven't lost a game in quite a while since they upset Pittsburgh. Have a bye week, so it's hard to complain. If you notice me looking off this way, it's because I got the 2 screens going to work, so I'm like, you get the side of my face while I'm talking, so you can see this really bad patchy beard I have growing. Enjoy it either way. Let's hop right into the Twitter questions. We'll go rapid fire around the horn here. From Mark Harrington. Open to activating Dozier as they wrap up the season and have him split series with Cologne to see where he's at heading into 2014. I would say, in theory and on paper, this sounds like a good idea. I think we've seen the redshirt season has done well for Ibushi. It looks like he could probably be a starter next year through 4 games. I mean, small sample size. Cologne has been a below-average starter this year. Dozier was a guy that even people who were critical of the Jets draft thought he was a good value where he was taken, and a guy who a lot of people seem to think has the requisite skills to be a starter at this level. So, I think you see how the next few games go. Cologne continues to struggle, is getting penalties, is getting beat, and maybe you're at a spot where you're, 2-11, 2-12. Like, sure, I'd love to see Dozier get some actual real live action before we get around to next season, but Rex is going to be stubborn with playing his veterans, and unless Dozier really showed over the bye week that he's a clear-cut better option than Cologne, I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of waited until next year with Dozier. Also, keep in mind Dalton Freeman, a guy who I think is probably the Jets' long-term replacement for Nick Mangold, but a guy who might also get a look at guard at some point, either at the end of this year or early next season. Dalton, what do you think?
Same as you. I mean, in theory, I like the idea, but I think Ibushi benefited from sitting out the entire year last year, and I think Dozier would benefit the same way. Cologne was actually worse than Winters when Winters was in there, ironically enough. So I do think that Freeman might get a crack before him. But I do think Freeman's pretty much entrenched as Mangold's replacement. But in terms of Dozier, I'd wait till next year. I wouldn't play him this year.
Cole?
I'm sort of on board with Dalvin. I would wait till next year to take a look at Dozier, just give him the full redshirt year. That being said, if you're going to do it, go all in. Don't split the snaps like was suggested. I think that's a terrible idea. Willie's been bad, but having them rotate at guard is, I think, a worse idea. So, go all in or go one way or the other.
I see Connor's logo in the corner, but not his picture, just like his avatar. So, yeah, we'll see what it is at his tech. But let's hop on to the next question. From Otto's World 365, who would you like to see as our next coach? Probably the most popular question, I would say, that we all get. We kind of touched on this a lot in the last podcast, so I'll keep it quick. Dream scenario, I would say Jim Harbaugh. More realistic scenario, I don't know. I don't know which assistant or college coach kind of jumps off the page. Adam Gase is kind of intriguing to me, depending on how Denver kind of finishes out. I think Quinn will get a look or an interview from Seattle if Rex is fired, and I think we've heard some good things about him. But when you're hiring a new coach, very rarely is it not kind of risking it on an unknown. Dalvin, is there anyone who jumps off the page the side of a big name like Harbaugh?
Harbaugh's the dream scenario, right? But the other guy that I like is Frank Reich from the offensive coordinator of San Diego. Realistic scenario, I think it's Rex. I think Rex is going to be back. I think this was a 3-year job as it was, and I think Rex has a chance to finish it next season.
Connor, how you doing? And answer. Well, there he disappeared. He was there. He disappeared. Cole, on to you. What do you think about head coach candidates?
I don't think there's anybody out there that's a known quantity that's going to be a marked difference over Rex, or at least a marked improvement. Obviously, like you guys said, if Harbaugh is attainable, then Harbaugh all the way. Otherwise, I think I'd rather just see Rex stick around, personally.
Next question from Chief Rocket 37. Was Jeremy Curley deserving of the extension? We're seeing this question also pop up a lot. A lot of frustration with Curley. He probably had the quietest, 5 or 6 game stretch of his career, of course, after signing his 4-year contract extension with the Jets. Again, even though now it's been 5 or 6 games, I hesitate to have too much recency bias in evaluating Curley, a guy who was really good for the Jets basically from the day he was given playing time in the middle of 2011. And a very productive 2012, was good last season, and I think is kind of struggling to find his role in the offense post-Percy Harvin. I think the Jets still are kind of figuring out how to integrate him the best way possible. I think Vic just missed him on a touchdown against the Steelers, but he's been quiet. I mean, I'm not ready to write the guy off because he's had, a disappointing stretch of games. I think, in a 3 wide, I see Decker as an above-average starter. I see Harvin as an above-average starter on the outside. And if Curley's isolated strictly to a slot role, he's an above-average slot receiver, right? He didn't forget how to play the position over the last 5 games. So probably a little early to judge the extension. And I would guess a point of focus over the bye week is finding a way to kind of get him a little more involved in the offense week to week. Dalvin.
Same thing. I think he deserved the extension. I think people forget that he had numbers as good as Mike Wallace did before he became a free agent, leaving Pittsburgh, minus the touchdowns. I think what you said is very accurate. Like they've come out and played all 3 of them together, and they're still learning how to do that. And that's going to take more than just 4 or 5 games. That's going to take honestly an entire offseason with whoever the quarterback is, and so it's just going to take time. But you're talking about he got a contract that's better than a lot of these. He got some less than Golden Tate, which I know Con and I talked about Curley getting that earlier in the offseason. We were talking about him getting an extension. So yeah, I think he absolutely deserved the extension.
Cole.
I think the extension was well deserved. I think that, like you guys said, it's going to take a while for all 3 of them to learn to play together, and it's going to be difficult to sort out Harvin and Curley's role because they have similar positions. But like you said, when you go 3 wide, you want 3 talented players out there, and Curley's not a bad third option. And I think in the end, you're going to want to pay that money to make sure your wide receiver room is stacked. And why not pay it to somebody that knows the offense, knows the team, and is already comfortable here?
Yeah, nothing wrong with having quality depth, and I think what Dalvin was referring to was that with Emmanuel Sanders, a lot of people were kind of freaking out because they were comparing Sanders' numbers these first 9 games playing with Peyton Manning and opposite Demaryius Thomas and Julius Thomas and Wes Welker, but failing to realize that prior to this season, Curley and Sanders had basically produced at an identical rate, despite Curley having much worse quarterback play. Not saying that makes Curley a better player than him or anything like that, but just kind of where some of the numbers come from the contract. He basically got paid at the same rate that Andre Roberts got paid at by the Reds. And I think they're very, comparable players.
Slot receiver, yeah.
Next question.
You guys hear me?
Yep.
All
right, we'll loop you in on the next question, which is perfect since it's draft-centric. From Young Reezy Escobar. Marcus Mariota or Jameis Winston, who is the better pro in Cap's QB prospect? Don't include Winston's off the field issues. I tend to agree with Connor here. I think as just a pure on-field quarterback, Winston's a superior player. Mariota's issues fumbling the football are concerning, especially after 5 years of watching Mark Sanchez and Geno Smith. And Mariota coming from a somewhat similar offense to Geno Smith, kind of a spread one read, is a little scary. I think Mariota is probably best served sitting a year, while Winston on field is probably ready to play. But again, you can't not mention the off the field issues. To put Winston in a situation where he has to play immediately in a big media market with an offensively negligent head coach, i.e. Rex Ryan, would be a disaster. But just as a pure on field prospect, I'd say Winston is better. Connor will go Connor, Cole, then Dalvin. Quick around the horn on this.
Yeah, I don't even think it's that close. I don't dislike Mariota as much as people think. It's just that I'm not willing to gamble on that. I don't think that. I mean, I had a good conversation with somebody the other day that has the same concerns, and they said, who was the last quarterback out of Oregon that you saw actually translate success in the NFL? And I know Mariota's been on another level compared to those guys, but it's going to be a long process with him. He can't start right away, and that's fine, but even after a year, it's still a huge gamble. And when you look at what Jameis does, a lot of people think he regresses this year because of the interceptions. It's not even close to true. The offense around him is pretty close to terrible. He still makes all the right reads. He has all the talent in the world. And when he loses a game, then you can come talk to me. But right now, the guy refuses to lose no matter who he's throwing the ball to. He's a better pro prospect.
Cole?
Yeah, I think if we're throwing the off-the-field stuff out the window, then Winston is by far the better quarterback as far as from a technical standpoint and even to some degree from a physical standpoint. I'm not sure he's as athletic as Mariota, but I'm also not sure that's necessarily the best quality to look for in your quarterback. Like Connor said, he's always making the right reads. He knows how to go through a progression. He can run a pro-style offense. Everything that I'm seeing tells me Winston over Mariota, and I might even consider that given the off-the-field issues.
Yeah, ignoring the off-the-field issues strictly from a quarterback perspective, I say Winston is the better prospect. I'm higher on Mariota, but that's because it's, like you said, it's hard to ignore the off-the-field stuff, especially in New York. But I think Winston, you can win championships with Jameis Winston, and with Mariota, it's going to take longer to get to that level. So strictly from a quarterback prospect position, I'd say Winston.
All right, pretty interesting question here from Nothing But Jets. Could the Jets fit better in a 4-3 with a new coach, with Copels and Sheldon on the ends, and Wilkerson and Harrison in the middle? And maybe just ignoring kind of the way he lined up the D linemen. Could the Jets translate their personnel into a 4-3 look? Connor, I'll start with you on this one. This will be our last question. So we'll go Connor, Cole Dalbin, and then I'll finish it off.
Yeah, you definitely could, but you would have to bring in, a couple more guys to the rotation, and I think it would hinder Wilkerson's ability from the 5 technique, which is the spot that he gets to the quarterback the quickest from. When he can make that outside step and swim or rip over the tackle and get right to the quarterback, and he's great with the strip sack. If you keep him at the 3 tech or just push him inside, obviously he can stuff the run just as good as anybody in the league, and he does get to the passer. It's just not as frequent. Also, I like Sheldon inside. I think right now what they're doing is fine. I would just like to see them actually take a speed edge rusher, a guy like maybe Bud Dupree. Obviously is premium talent in this draft, but I really would like to see this defense with a top-end pass rusher, not the equivalent of Von Miller, but somebody with a skill set that can get off the edge and get to the quarterback.
Cole, what do you think?
I've actually had a similar thought before, and I'm wondering if it doesn't come from the same place as just trying to find a place for Quentin Copels to fit in. But I think that's misplacing your talent. I think Wilkerson and Richardson have shown that they can be elite 3-4 defensive ends from the 5 technique. Moving them inside, I think, is a waste of talent. I mean, granted, you can get pressure and you can be productive from the inside, a la Ndamukong Suh, but I think when you have the talent you have, there's like a clear formation. And then if you keep Rex Ryan in place or get another creative defensive coordinator, however it may be, they're going to use hybrid schemes anyway, and they're moving the players all around the line. You're never running a true 4-3, 3-4 anything set. So I don't think it really – I'm not even sure it's really a valid question because you just put your players in the best position to succeed, really. But like Connor said, the defense could use an edge rusher, and I'm not sure Quentin Copels is that man.
Dalvin.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys, but more so not even for just the D-line, but also the linebackers, because then you would move Demario Davis to the outside and play Harris in the middle, and then you need another outside linebacker. I'm not sure if Davis is suited to play off the outside, so that does remove a good player off the field, and you'd have to get a legit edge rusher. So I'd be hesitant to do it. I think a 3-4 is fine, but like Cole said, they don't play a lot of 3-4 now anyway. It's a lot of 46, a lot of 44s. You see a lot of 4-3s anyway. So So I don't think the formation so much matters in changing it. I mean, it's true. It's to fit Copels, and Copels may not be that guy that you need at that edge position.
Yeah, I mean, just wrapping up on this question and our questions for tonight. I agree. I think it's been frustrating with Copels. I think from a talent perspective, we keep saying this is a guy who has the talent to be a 10, 12 sack guy a year, but I don't know if his ceiling isn't just kind of being like Calvin Pace, like 2008 Calvin Pace. And that, I mean, it's not meant to be like he's a bum or like that might be his peak, like a guy who's like a good edge player in a certain defense, maybe he has 7 or 8 sacks for a couple seasons, but I don't think he's ever going to be this kind of dominant guy who's getting Defensive Player of the Week and discussion for the Defensive Player of the Year, like we've seen from someone like Chandler Jones, who was taken at the same spot before he got hurt. I just don't know if he's explosive and consistent enough yet. Maybe it's too early to say that about him, but we're into year 3 here, and as you look at how they're going to structure this defense long term, and as his contract comes up after next year, how much are they going to be willing to invest in him, and how high are they going to look to draft an edge rusher, because something they've really avoided for a long time here. Moving off the questions and kind of looking at this week against Buffalo and this final 6 games, again, it's been a long time since the Jets have lost a game, thanks to the bye week and thanks to upsetting Pittsburgh. When I think all of us had kind of reached the breaking point, wondering if they could ever win a game this year. And then sure enough, they come out. I think Pittsburgh came out flat in that game and was definitely made some odd decisions with how they were decided to attack the Jets defense. That being said, great job by Rex Ryan. Came up with a great game plan, had his team ready to play, and got the game of his life out of Jaquan Jarrett and Marcus Williams, who played really well. Vic hit the one big play down the field, and that was really enough. I mean, beyond that, the Jets offense didn't do too much, but it was enough. So now it comes to a Buffalo team who pretty much whipped the Jets a few weeks ago. It's very easy to look at that game and say it's 100% on Geno Smith, but that was a 14-7 game after Vic came in. It was a 24-17 game at halftime, and the Jets still lost by over 3 possessions. So, now Vic has had a few weeks of the starters. He had a bye week with the starters. Harvin's more acclimated to the offense. Maybe the Jets have not turned a page, but found a little bit more of an identity that they can live with. Against what we've seen historically, this is a bad game for the Jets. They're 1-4 off a bye off Rex Ryan. They're 2-12 after their last 14 wins. They haven't necessarily played all that well in Buffalo, and we just saw Buffalo beat them. That being said, the hope for an optimistic Jet fan is that they somehow turn some type of a corner against Pittsburgh. They're going to settle in with Williams, Adams, and Walls playing at corner, with Jaquan Jarrett at safety, and maybe Pryor rotating in for Landry at some points. Offensively, they're more comfortable with Vic, and Buffalo really basically just had their season ended by Miami 10 days ago. I mean, to expect they needed that game. They needed to beat Kansas City. They needed to beat Miami. They lost those 2 games, so I wonder if we get kind of a flat team who just had their season ended, similar to a Jets team who knew their season was over when they lost to New England and was flat against Buffalo. So I'll say, what do you think about the matchup, Donovan?
I think it's a Chris Ivory game, right? Like they were showing pictures earlier. It's practically a blizzard up in Buffalo. It's a game that the O-line is going to have to do to Buffalo's front seven, which Buffalo has a very underrated front seven. The Jets' offensive line in the running game is going to have to do the same to them that they did to New England, and it's just run because Vic played bad against Buffalo after the second half. Like, he didn't play that great. I mean, he even came out and said today that he was disappointed by the way he played. The Jets have a chance to effectively end Buffalo's season, and that is something for them to play for, because I think you touched on this in your article. They're set up nicely to go on a nice little winning streak if they beat Buffalo, because then they get Tennessee and Minnesota. So they have a chance, both Rex, Marty, and the entire team, they have a chance to effectively change the tune of their season. 8-8 looks a lot better than 2-14. But I think it's a Chris Ivory game, and I think Marty needs to run him until his legs fall off.
Cole, what do you think about the matchup?
I think it's going to be the key is going to be the offensive line versus the Buffalo defensive line. They struggled with them last time, particularly Ode Ibushi. I think that was his first start. Really struggled against Marcel Darius and Kyle Williams, as anybody would, because they're 2 of the best interior defenders in the league. But I think the way to protect their dominating the pass rush like they did last time is to start running the ball. Like Dalvin said, just keep pounding it up the gut, feed Chris Ivory. And then I think the key is going to be avoiding turnovers, because the Buffalo secondary has also been playing extremely well, even at the safety position, where a lot of people thought it would fall off after Jairus Byrd left. So, Vic is going to have to, keep it close to the vest and make smart decisions and just avoid turnovers. And I think it's winnable. I think they're pretty well-matched teams. I think, honestly, Buffalo might be better talent, might have more talent overall at this point. But, I think it's a winnable game, and I think it just comes down to the trenches.
Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I posted today, it's going to be really sloppy. I think it's just taking care of the ball and playing a really boring, slow game, to be honest with you, is how they're going to win. I wouldn't be surprised if they do win, if it's like a 13-10, 13-9 type of game. A lot of running, a lot of short passes, a lot of 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 5s that you're going to have to find a way to convert. And, we've been saying it all year, but that's on Jay Samaro right now. And it's not technically on him, but the coaching staff to get him involved over the middle. And, whether using him more in hook routes or just anything, Curley on a drag route, Salas on drag route, it's not going to be the type of game where you're throwing 20, 25 yards in the air all game long. And you can't take the chance of having Vic hold on to the ball that long in this kind of weather, because he's one hit away from a clear fumble.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the rest of the season, I'm trying like not to. I think it's easy to be really encouraged by that Pittsburgh game and say, hey, like you know what? If they could go out and beat Buffalo and Miami, two divisional games. I like their matchup against two rookie quarterbacks. Maybe they could string together this 5-game winning streak and finish 7-9, or even crazy enough 8-8. Or it's easy to kind of say like the opposite extreme and be Pittsburgh game was a mirage. They never went after the bye. They never went after a win. They're going to go get smacked by Buffalo. They're going to lose on primetime to Monday night, and they're going to probably finish 3-13 or 4-12. My guess is that it's probably somewhere in the middle. If you have gun to my head right now, I'll say they'll probably finish 5-11, maybe 6-10. I do think that if they find a way to beat Buffalo and Miami, I think they'll absolutely beat Minnesota and Tennessee, and that was kind of my Sunday morning hot take that if Rex Ryan wins these next two games, I think they beat Minnesota and Tennessee just because they're playing rookie quarterbacks. And if Rex wins 5 games in a row, he's back next year. I mean, regardless of what happens in those final 2 games, even if they split or they're competitive, they hit the 6-10, 7-9, they'll bring Rex back, they'll bring Vic back, and they'll go from there. What Rex has to do is just find a way to win these 2 games. And Buffalo and Miami are both better than the Jets. These are not easy games. Playing in Buffalo is not easy. Miami is right in the middle of the wild card race and playing really good football right now. The Jets will get him on national TV in primetime. But, for Rex keeping his job, you could bet that this organization puts more value in beating a division opponent on national television than it will, more so than can they win in Tennessee or can they win in the end of the year in Miami. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. It's a complete toss-up. I think it will be a competitive game on Sunday. It's just hard to still have too much faith in a 2-8 team. Kind of last point before we wrap up, Dalvin, how do you see this season ending? Where do you see this record kind of shaking out, finishing up at?
Well, I said 9-7 before the season starts, and that kind of became mathematically impossible last week, 2 weeks ago. I think they go 7-9. I think they have one loss in them. I think that they beat Buffalo on Sunday. I think they beat Miami. I think they beat New England late in the season, too. I think their one loss is going to be one that we don't expect, either to Tennessee, who had Pittsburgh on the ropes last night, by the way. So, I wouldn't necessarily count that as a win. Or it might be to Teddy Bridgewater in Minnesota. You just never know. The NFL is really weird this year. But I think they finished 7-9. I think Rex is back.
Cole, what do you think?
I appreciate Dalvin's optimism. After the season we've had so far, and like you said, against Pittsburgh, it's easy to get a little confident after that. I don't feel confident about beating any team, even ones quarterbacked by rookies, and even given Rex's history against rookies. I think Tennessee showed that they have some good players last night.
Mm-hmm.
I think Miami is clearly a much better team than the Jets are right now. You heard what I thought about Buffalo, and then New England's New England. They're the cream of the crop in the AFC right now. I don't feel confident about any of it. I'll guess they win 2 more games. I think they'll lose one of the Minnesota-Tennessee, and they'll split with Miami, just because they love playing spoiler there. I don't feel great about it. I think they'll end up with 4 wins, but we'll see.
Connor, how do you think they wrap up?
Yeah, I say they get 2 to 3 more wins. I think they'll play a lot more, hopefully, clean ball. Hopefully it's not turning over. But I think the defense is definitely going to go out and play hard. They're not looking, at least they, they play, it seemed like they play a little harder under Vic, knowing that he's not just going to toss the ball away 3 times in 7 minutes. But yeah, 2 to 3 more wins, and, they'll be picking pretty early in the draft, so that conversation will be really interesting.
A lot of draft conversation coming our way. So we'll wrap it up. We'll have our normal coverage leading up to the game against Buffalo, and then we'll, keep it rolling through these last 6 games and get very heavy into what should be a very, very interesting offseason for this Jets team, from the front office to the draft to free agency to just about damn near everything. That's what happens when you're 2-8. So, guys, thanks for joining tonight, and thanks to everybody for listening.
All right, guys, take it easy.
Adios.